guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, and that means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I am here today with a legend of card magic in the UK. Well, not just the UK, but all over the world. Somebody who has created, performed, innovated more card routines than pretty much any other creative magic put together. I have here the one and only Paul Gordon. How you doing, Paul?
Hello, Craig. How are you? It's very good to see you, and I'm glad we've been able to make friends again. Absolutely. You might want to explain that at some stage. Make friends again, and here we are.
Absolutely. Well, we can get to that. That's definitely something that we can get to. We can talk about that in the interview. But no, I completely agree with you. Life's too short to life's too short. And you know what? I've had so many people on this channel say to me, when are you going to interview Paul Gordon? When are you going to interview Paul Gordon? When is Paul Gordon going to be interviewed? And I think that's a testament to how popular you have been, you continue to be today, because I do get things on the channel all the time. I get people saying, can you interview this guy? Can you interview this guy? But your name comes up so often. You know, so a lot of people want to hear what you've got to say. A lot of people want to hear your thoughts on magic. So, you know, it's wonderful that you've been able to find the time to come on the show, mate.
Well, it's very nice of you to ask me, and it genuinely is very nice of you to ask me. You know, before I get too old, and before I have to get the old Zimmer frame out the cupboard, and you know, maybe people are just making sure I'm still alive.
Well, you know what? You annoy the hell out of me. I've got to be honest, because you just turned 60, and you're probably younger than me. Like you got this whole Peter Pan thing going on. Like I lost my hair 15 years ago. You still got enough, and it was so annoying. Before we started the interview, he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm getting a bit of grey there. I would kill to have some grey hair. I'd kill to have hair, Paul, grey or otherwise. To be perfectly honest,
Well, it's actually a syrup. You can't quite see the join. It's slipping a bit, but no, I think I'm like my dad. My dad had a good head of hair, but you know, one thing is that, you know, I've had lots of trouble. I mean, I've been married far too many times. I've been broke. I've had money. I've been broke again. I've had all sorts of things in my life, but I've always had a good sense of humor, and you know, I think that and a bit of energy and the love. I mean, I just love magic and the business and the whole racket, and which is probably why I've been around such a bloody long time. If you don't like it, people fall out, don't they? You know, they fall out of the business.
Well, I think that's one of the things that you know, you're like me. You've got some people that love you, some people that don't love you, you know, and that's absolutely fine. But one thing that nobody can disagree with is the statement that you are so passionate about magic. You're so passionate about the magic community as a whole. And that passion is infectious. It really is. And we'll talk about demoing, and we'll talk about magic dealers and magic stands a little bit later on, but you work so hard when you're at a lecture or you're at a convention and you're there. You work so hard to make sure that every single person who sees you leaves with something that, you know, is valuable to them, and that's wonderful to see. It really is.
Well, thank you. That's nice for you to say so, but the reason I started doing that kind of thing is, well, partly it's natural, but and I'm sure you've had this same experience. When I was younger, I used to see some lecturers who looked like they would rather not be there, and they would come on with no energy, and they looked like they hadn't rehearsed. There was no engagement, and so when I lecture, it's like a show, and I'm teaching, so I come on, I have the same energy like a performance. And you've seen me do that on video, and you've seen me in person, but I have that same energy. So I teach, I rehearse this so much. I try and teach succinctly, but quickly. And I have I tell lots of gags and stories in the lecture and the show, this, that, and the other, because it's the antidote to those people I used to see when I was younger, who would be like, what I'm going to show you now is a trick I've been doing all my life. And then they get it wrong. And you think, you can't have been doing this at every gig. And you and I both know, when people say, I do this at every gig, and then they show you, you know darn well if they have or haven't.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you just know, don't you? Because they either louse it up or it's just not honed in. So you can't fool people like you, because, you know, you've been around a heck of a long time as well. And I'm veering off the question now, but you know where I'm going with that.
No, absolutely. And you know what? I see a lot of lectures, and they're basically glorified dealer demos.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to buy this to do this trick. You have to buy this to do this trick. You have to buy this to do this trick. Not that I'm mentioning any names, Jay Sankey, but you know, it is the case. But with you, yeah, you've got products to sell. Yeah, you've got books. You got packet tricks. You got, but you could go to a Paul Gordon lecture, not buy anything, and still go away with some incredible value, having learned some amazing tricks. And you don't need to buy anything in order to take the knowledge that you've actually imparted there. You just need a deck of cards you can follow along with you while you're actually lecturing it, which is becoming rarer and rarer every single lecture I see. There's more. Yeah, it's you know.
I hardly see it anymore. I stopped going to so many lectures because, I mean, this is no detriment to our friends across the pond, but it is generally American lecturers who think that their job is to sell, 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 sell. I remember the late Darryl, God bless his cotton socks, but it was just geared to sell, and it was so much that people were getting kind of annoyed by it. You know, it was just annoying. There was no teaching going on. It was just sell, sell, sell. And you know, I just say to people, I say, look, let me just tell you from the start, I've got some products here. I'll be performing as many as I can. 90% of the stuff I'm doing for you is from the books. You know, if you like what I do, there it is. And then I carry on. And that's it really. You know, I love it. I love it dearly.
I know you do, which is amazing. Now, I want to start, for those people that don't know who you are, I can't imagine that there's many out there that don't know who Paul Gordon is, but for those people who haven't heard of Paul Gordon, let's just start at the very beginning. It feels like you've been in magic forever. And you have. I mean, you said to me off camera, just before we started, that you went to your first Blackpool at 1974. Well, I wasn't born till 1976. So, you know, you've been in and around magic since I was born and then some.
And then some.
So let's start at the very beginning. When did you get into magic? What's your origin story? Was it the typical I got a kit of when I was a kid, or how did that go?
Well, it's the first thing I saw. My great uncle Reg, and I've actually created a trick called The Tale of Great Uncle Reg, which is a comedy thing. And my great uncle Reg, when I was 4 years old, so 1965, 66, and he showed me this coin trick. It wasn't a card trick, it was a coin trick. And he took the coin, blew on it, and it vanished. And he later told me how he did it. And it's called cuffing, where in the old days, men used to have trousers with a turn up on the trouser leg on the bottom. And what he would do is, with misdirection, he would literally drop the coin after doing a French drop or something, and it would roll. I can't quite get here, but it would roll down the crease bit there. Can you see that?
Yep.
It would roll down the crease and end up in the cuff of the trouser. It's a bit like sleeving, really, I guess. But anyway, so I was fascinated, and then my parents bought me a magic set, and that was it.
Okay. And when did you, like, obviously you've been a professional magician for a very long time. Did you go straight into professional magic from leaving school? I mean, so you got this magic set, you started getting interested in magic. Did you become a full-time professional straight away, or was there a period of time where you were doing other stuff?
Well, my dad was a great, I mean, he'd be great for the youngsters today, because my dad said to me, instead of farting about in your bedroom with this stuff, go down to the local pub and entertain them down there with it. And I knew nothing about entertainment. So I was about 13, 14 years old. And I went down to the pub and I was crap. And I cried. I don't mind admitting it. I was awful. And I remember going up to this guy and I said, hello, my name is Paul and I want to show you a card trick. And he turned around and said, F off. And I got really upset. So I went home. My dad said, you're going to go back down there tomorrow and the day after, you're going to keep doing it until you get it right. And so that's what I did. And I started to realize that you have to speak to people in a certain way and you can't do long-winded tricks and blah, 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 blah. And I left school early at 15 because I hated school, and I'm dyslexic, so I found school really difficult. And in those days, you weren't called dyslexic, you were called thick or troublesome, you know. So I got out of school at 15 and I went to work in the theatre business. And in the theatre business, my boss, who was a wonderful boss who I still see, he said, I like your magic. He said, in the intervals and the shows and the bar and the restaurants, I'd like you to go and entertain people if you'd like to. Well, he couldn't stop me if he tried. So that was really the start of it. And then I carried on working in the theatres until the mid-90s. So I actually turned fully professional about 26, 27 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But before you turned professional, you were doing it sort of semi-professionally. I know we just spoke that you had your first trick published in Abra in 1980. You know, so so you were although you didn't turn full-time pro until the mid-90s, you were going out and performing all over the place in between everything else you were doing.
I was doing, and it wasn't like sort of semi-professional sticking a couple of gigs in. I was doing it every day. So I was working in the theatre business, and at every show, I'd either compare it. I was very young. I compared it, and I learned how to compare, how to talk, how to eye contact, gags, so on and so forth. But every opportunity in the bar or for the acts or the artists, my boss would say, go on, entertain them. And I did it. I didn't get paid for it. But if I could tell you this, really, this was in a book of mine called The Real Secrets of Card Magic, this story. And I don't, you might have that behind you up there. But about 32, 33 years ago, I was on a business trip for the theatre, and I was with these people I didn't get on with, I didn't like, and I didn't like the whole thing. So they, every evening, it was in Birmingham somewhere, they went off and sort of did whatever they did. I went to the bar downstairs, and I don't mind telling you, every night I got absolutely slaughtered. And I used to go down there, and I'd have a bloody great glass of vodka, and I'd drink it. And one evening I was there getting merrily sloshed, and in the corner there were some Americans, and I could see them talking, and I was just sat there with a pack of cards practicing for my own enjoyment. And this guy came over and said, "Hey pal, what's going on over there?" And I said, "Well, I do this, you know, I'm a magician." He said, "I'll come and show us something." And after saying, "Well, I don't really want to," and I've had a couple of drinks, I did. I went over, and I loved it. I hadn't done that kind of a thing before, and I entertained these people for about an hour. And at the end, this big head honcho with all the gold and the bracelets and the money and the suitcases and leather, he said, "Okay, guys, get your money together. We've got to thank him." I said, no. I didn't do it for money. He said, "You'll embarrass us if you don't take it." You know, he stuffed this money in my side pocket. I went up to bed. I collapsed on the bed through drink and through tiredness. I woke up the next morning, went down to this breakfast meeting for the theatre business, and I remember the money in my pocket. So bearing in mind, this is 1987, something like that, and my wages in those days was something like £400 a month. And I went into the pocket and I took the money under the table, and I let out one of those whoo noises out of surprise. There was 600 quid in this envelope. And I thought, that moment, I said to myself, because I knew nobody in the business, you know, in those days, people didn't do what we now do. And I thought, there's a living in this racket. And I never knew people earned money from doing that kind of thing. You know, to me, magicians were David Copperfield on stage or Paul Daniels on TV. There wasn't, you know, there wasn't the huge fraternity of magicians doing weddings and parties that there are now.
And I think a lot of newer people that are new to magic, and by new I mean in the last few years, they're going to be listening to this and they're going to be a bit surprised. But in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, close-up magic wasn't really a thing. It wasn't. I mean, it just didn't happen. I remember when I first got into magic, you know, I wanted to buy, I was looking at catalogs and things, and I was buying stuff like head twisters and dagger chests and chair suspensions, just because that's what you kind of did when you got into magic. You buy all the prop magic and you put an act together to go on stage, not to do close-up.
No, nobody did it. The only person I ever met, who you'll know, that wrote a book about it, and it was a puzzle for people because they thought, what is this? Is this American? And it was Mark Leveridge, who wrote a booklet called The Art of Table Hopping.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I kid you not, I seem to remember thinking that table hopping was the act, you know, like dancing on the tables. I genuinely believe that. I didn't know what table hopping was. And that booklet came out about 1980. And I remember buying it. And I remember then thinking, oh, this looks like a good racket, you know.
Yeah.
No, you're earning money from doing something that you enjoy. And of course, as we know, you know, you then realize later that it means schlepping up and down the M1 at midnight, you know. But yeah.
That's very, very interesting. So let me ask you another question. You're known as a card magician.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the creations yet or the dealing. I want to talk about you as a performer. You're known as a card magician. I don't think anyone's ever seen Paul Gordon do anything else other than card tricks. Not that that's a problem, but my question is, what gravitated you towards card magic? What did you initially learn all types of magic and you settled on cards, or is there other stuff? So I was interviewing Danny Goldsmith the other day. I don't know if you know Danny, amazing coin guy. And then he just started busting out some amazing card stuff. And he's like, well, I can do cards, I just don't.
Yeah.
Is that the same with you? Or is it like all of your effort goes into card magic? And if so, why? Why did you end up with cards?
Well, when up until the age of 15, 16, I did all sorts of things. And to be honest, I wasn't very good at any of it. You know, I tried coins. I didn't particularly like coins. I tried ropes and string, and that didn't work. And I always gravitated to the pack of playing cards that was sat on the sideboard. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was I then saw Harry Lorayne live in America, and I saw him just thrill. I mean, I don't want to be detrimental, but there was a well-known American card guy in one corner boring the crap out of people, you know, like, what you do is you take the card and you do this, you know. But Harry Lorayne was on the other side, and people were like, and I thought, wow, he's entertained people with a pack of cards for an hour, and people want more, and he's got them laughing and smiling. The next thing was at a magic convention, and you know what this feels like. When people are detrimental about what you do, it's a red rag to a bull to people like you and me, because I think we are a similar nature like that. And Billy McComb and Alan Shaxton came up to me and said, you're wasting your time, son, fiddling around with playing cards. It'll get you nowhere. You cannot make a living from them. People want to see other stuff. And I remember thinking, oh, we'll see about that then. And that was it, really. It was one of those moments where I thought, if it's all about entertainment and engaging people, and if you're a good entertainer, you could presumably make a living out of vanishing bottle tops. You know,
yeah.
Cards are just, as you know, cards are just the medium. You know, it's got to be good card magic. It's got to be strong and visual, practical, get into, get out of, as we know, reset, blah, blah, blah. But it is 95% your persona. I mean, for instance, you know, you perform My Corner Piccadilly on that video. I mean, I am buttering you up. It was such a fantastic performance, but I've seen other people do it and make it look like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a simple thing that you either perform it well or you don't, and people will buy into you or they don't buy into you. And, you know, you've done very well, and thankfully, I'm not boasting, but I've done well out of it because I've realized it's all about engagement and entertainment.
That's it. And I think the problem with a lot of people that are into magic now, they don't focus on the presentation. They literally just, you know, do the move. It's almost like a demonstration of card steel. Look, if I put this here, it does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this.
Yeah.
But you know, I would rather my audiences walk away going, that was very entertaining, than that was very magical.
Yeah.
If I get both, that's great, but it's more important for me to be an entertainer than a magician, if that kind of makes sense.
Well, of course, I mean, people, when they phone up and book again, they don't say, are you the guy who made the 4 aces disappear? They say, are you the guy that made all my guests laugh?
Yeah.
2 hours. You know, I mean, I never, again, I hope this doesn't sound boastful, but I never thought of myself as a comedian until somebody phoned up once and said, I'd like to book the comedian Paul Gordon. And I realized, when you look back on some of those videos I've done over the years, people are laughing, not because I'm telling jokes, but because I'm interacting, I'm taking the mickey a bit, I'm being a bit naughty, I'm ribbing them, and I don't mind admitting I'm flirting outrageously with the women, you know, and we all do that. And I'm being pally and matey with the blokes, you know, so I'm not upsetting them. And as you know, once you get all that thing rolling, you get people laughing, and people who don't know the difference will assume that it's comedy. And it
Yeah.
is in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is absolutely right. Which is why, personally, although I do think about how I'm presenting something, obviously you can't not. I prefer to be as unscripted as possible, because then you can play off the situation. And that video of the corner of Piccadilly is the perfect example. I went completely off script during that because of how she was, and she was trying to be very challenging. If I just had a script that I went down, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good as it was. But you have to be able to adapt on a performance by performance basis.
And I think that's where British performers work better than American performers. American performers, if you read their books, it's all about scripting, isn't it? And about the whole thing. And sometimes you can see that you can see them performing like there's a script behind their reading, because they're so focused on the script. Somebody comes in and makes an aside or a comment, they get lost, a lot of them.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, I've had things backfire on me, and I don't mind saying, one of them, and I wouldn't do it now because it was a bit 1970s, a bit 80s. But I was performing for a group of people, and I was doing easy ace estimation, which you know.
Yeah.
And the woman in front of me was in her 40s, so she wasn't a young girl, so it wasn't kind of distasteful, and she wasn't an older lady. She was in her 40s, and she had the lowest cut top on you've ever seen, and it was just like so low, unbelievable, and she knew it. So one of the gags in the routine I suddenly came up with at that stage was, I said, I'd like you to reach over and square the deck up. Nothing to do with the magic, just reach over and square the deck up, So that was the gag. And I came up with it just like that. She laughed, her husband laughed, it went very well. So probably like you, I went home and I came kind of I've got a red book here somewhere, bits of pieces, don't forget this bit of gag, that little line, that worked, that didn't work. Anyway, about a month later, a similar situation. There was a woman there, and she was of a similar type. And I said, I'd like you to reach over, square the deck up. I did the gag. She didn't laugh, and there was a tap on my shoulder, and this bloke said, what's your game, mate? Now, what I didn't realize was the guy she was sat with wasn't her husband, it was her brother. Her husband was at the bar behind me, and all he saw was me chatting his wife up. I learned by getting that badly wrong to never do that again. And of course, in this day and age, it would be classed as inappropriate anyway. But I go back a long time, so I go back when "Are You Being Served" was classed as top comedy.
Well,
and love thy neighbour.
It's true. It's true. Carry on. It's okay to fail, as long as you fail forwards, as long as you learn from that mistake, or you learn. What I see sometimes is magicians, and they'll make the same mistake over and over again, and not actually kind of go, well, maybe it's a good idea if I change that. They just keep doing the same thing.
I don't understand why they do that, because if you must have a feeling that either the trick didn't work or what you said didn't work. I often say, magicians, one of the questions I get mostly is, how can I cure my nerves? And I think you probably agree here. I always say, if you know your act inside out, if you know your sleights inside out, the routines, if you've got a general idea where you're going to go with it, if you look right, if you've got the right attitude, blah, 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 blah. If all these positive things work, you will never be nervous. But if you're uncertain about a routine or a sleight, or you don't know what to say, or all these anxiety issues just make you kind of get a bit. So you see performers, and like you've seen at magic conventions, especially, where in the bar, they're all kind of casual, oh, no problem at all. And they go out and suddenly they realize that they are being watched by really well-versed magicians, and they haven't really mastered the one-hand palm as best as they thought they had.
Yeah.
And then they get to that stage where they palm the card, they get nervous, and then everything goes down. And it's the same with gigs, isn't it? If as you know, you can arrive on a nice Sunday afternoon, you can arrive at a party and you look through the door and there's 200 drunks who need entertaining, and you've got to go in there, haven't you, and entertain 200 drunks. So you've got to go from this, when you were in the car listening to your music, nice and easy, and you suddenly got to go into that mode, haven't you?
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree with you. Now, on the subject of entertainment, and I want to continue talking about your career for a second, as well as performing as a magician professionally, you also were a professional singer.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, that came, I mean, I've always preferred the singing to the magic, to be honest, but I always wanted to sing when I was a boy. And again, this is the red rag to the bull story. When I was a kid at school, I wanted to go into acting and singing. And in those days, in the 70s, boys who went into acting were derogatorily called, you know what I mean? You know? Yeah. So, and it wasn't, in those days, it was derogatory terms, and it was unpleasant and nasty. So that was that stopped me doing it. So when I left school, I got into the theatre business, and I wanted to learn how to sing. And I taught myself how to sing at the same time as the magic. So I used to practice 8 hours a day. And after 10 years of singing, at the age of 23, 24, I went for an audition with a very well-known big band. And I was so nervous. It was one of those times when you realize that adrenaline is actually brown. And I went for this audition, and thankfully I got it. And then I started singing it with bands in nightclubs, pubs and restaurants. And I learned a lot about performing magic by performing singing in pubs, you know.
Wow.
For drugs.
And you've continued with singing, and you ever since, you know, it's something that you've done both at the same time. You've always offered yourself as a magician and as a professional singer as well.
Yeah, and I actually did it together once. I used to book gigs where I would do the big band singing and then the close up before or after around the tables. But the older I got, it was so tiring that after talking, like, you know, around the tables for 2 hours non-stop verbal patter, I got up on stage and couldn't sing.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So I stopped doing that. And then I got invited to do 4Fs, you know, Fector's finger flinging frolics in 2008. And Obie O'Brien said, could you do a magic trick whilst you were singing? So I did signed card to cigarette. So I'm singing in the style of Frank Sinatra with a cigarette. I had a card chosen, signed, and I palmed it into my pocket, rolled it in my pocket like rolling a bit of putty, and I loaded it into a fake cigarette in my pocket whilst singing, and then I switched it for the cigarette. The whole thing was so nerve-wracking, so difficult to do, because on the front row you've got all your famous magicians. I wish I'd never done it now, but it worked out okay.
I can imagine that would be very stressful. My God.
Really, and I shouldn't have done it because it almost kind of made me ill, because I suffer from anxiety at the best of times.
Well, here's a question. So we've talked about your career. We've talked about how, and obviously, you know, just to wrap that whole thing up, you have kind of gone into retirement now as a professional performer. Yeah, you have retired. Obviously, you're not slowing down, and you're still creating, and you're still doing that side of things, which I'm going to get to now. But as a performer, you've decided to kind of take a step back and you know.
Well, you know, it was simple. You know, I'm sure, again, I keep saying this like you, but I'm sure this is true. If you're a good businessman, you make sure you earn money and save it when you're young enough to do that, and so on. So I learned that from my dad and their mistakes, the family. So I've always worked very hard, and I've always, you know, business-wise been good like that. But last February, not this February, the February 2020, in Blackpool, I said to my wife, I said, you know what, I'm not enjoying the gigs, and I've done them for 40 years. Would you mind if I just said no to it? And she said, no, I don't blame you. And as fate would have it, coronavirus kicked in the same time, and that was basically the end of it anyway. So it seemed like, you know, the gods had come together for me anyway. And the thing is, I haven't done a gig now I haven't done a gig in, the last gig I did was that February, And if you don't do a gig for 2 or 3 weeks, you feel rusty, don't you?
Yeah.
And I would be like a new boy if I started gigging again. I wouldn't even know what to do. I'd probably lose my timing, my patter, the whole thing. I probably wouldn't be as good as I used to be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Which brings us to the subject of creating magic, because obviously that's something that everybody knows you for.
Yeah.
You are a very prolific creator of magic. So when did I mean, we spoke off camera and you said that the first thing that you had published was in ABBA in 1980.
Yeah.
When did you decide that you wanted to be a creator? When did you decide? Did you originally create magic for your own purposes, for your own act, or did you have in mind, you talked about how you knew Ken Brook, and what made you decide to actually start creating and selling magic?
Well, the first thing was I never did it for ego reasons, like, I'm going to start publishing stuff. It was simply the fact that in the library when I was a boy, the only books in the library were Expert at the Card Table and Expert Card Technique, not even Royal Road. So I opened those up when I was a young lad and I couldn't do a thing in them. And then when I could do a thing in them, I thought they were quite archaic. It was kind of parlor card magic, and none of it really resonated with me. So I started tinkering with my own thoughts and ideas, and I had nobody to show them to until the late 70s, where I met Rovey, and Rovey said, "Oh, that's good, son. Show it to Goodliff." And then if Goodliff published it, I mean, I say 1980, but the first actual one was on Magic Cassette in 1979, which was the audio cassette in those days. And Goodliff bought a handful of these things. He used to pay 50, used to get a 50p voucher for a trick. And that was it. And then Apocalypse, I used to send them off to Harry, Lorayne and Apocalypse. But it was Roger Crosswaite in the mid 80s who said, these are good things, Paul. And I said, yeah, but I don't know, and I'm a bit anxious about it, and it's a bit big-headed and all that. He said, no, he said, do something. So I did a booklet in the mid 80s, which I used to staple together, and it surprisingly did well. And then I did some lecture notes, and they did well. And then I started writing in 1991. Took 5 years to come out. Nocturnal Creations, which you've got behind you.
I have an original Nocturnal Creations. There you go.
Nocturnal Creations. That took 5 years. And the reason that took 5 years, Craig, is because I didn't have a computer. That is all hand typed. All that you see. And if I made a mistake, you couldn't use Tipex. You had to start the page again. So and all those numbers on the bottom are hand stuck with I can't remember the stuff it's called now. It's like spray glue, spray mount. So that whole book is literally hand cobbled together. A nightmare.
But this book is so good. There's so much amazing material in here.
Oh, thank you. Well, you do Easy Ace estimation from there, don't you?
Yeah, I do a lot of routines out of here. So I'm just looking through it now. Psychotronic Rides again.
Oh yeah.
I do that an awful lot. The Gordon Diary, obviously.
Twister used to do, didn't you? I think.
Which one?
Twister.
I still do Twister. Yeah.
Yeah.
Touch Thrice Removed. I've done many times. Lots of them. Lots and lots of routines. This is a Gemini Collectors. There's so many great routines in there.
Very kind.
So you bought out Nocturnal Creations,
which cost a fortune, by the way, because my first wife, she almost divorced me over it, because I said, if I'm going to do this, I think I'd like to do a hardback book. And in those days, 30 years ago, I didn't know anything about it then. So it cost something like 6,000 quid. And I had to get a bank loan out to do it. And I said to her, if it fails, I will put my hands up and say, but if I don't try this, I'll never know. And Nocturnal Creations ended up selling out 3,000 copies sold of that, which in the business is a very good, which then egged me on to continue doing that.
And then obviously you bought out another book and another book and another book, and you continue to do so now, which is wonderful. And one of the things that I like seeing when you're at a convention is, and we'll talk about magic conventions in a bit, but you see all of these dealers with weird and wonderful toys and props. You're just there with generally a stack of books. But people are buying the books.
Yeah.
One of the reasons people are buying the books is because you're demming routines out of there. You're actually performing the routines out of there. And I think the problem these days is a lot of people will see a book and they'll walk by looking for that next shiny object. But if you actually saw the stuff, and I've made this point on the review show, you could spend, like I just reviewed this thing called Watch This, which is a playing card that turns into a watch. And it's 70, 80 pounds for and it's black art and it can't be done and it's impractical and blah, 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 blah. For that 70 or 80 pounds, you could buy 3 or 4 Paul Gordon books and have hundreds of routines, literally have an entire act, but people want to buy that, and it just makes no sense to me.
I don't get it either. I mean, I have kind of friendly arguments with people where I'll just go out of screen for a moment. Let me just get this. Nocturnal Gold Dust, rather. That's a bloody big book, that is. Yeah. It's sold out now, but it was a £50 retail, which actually I don't think is a lot, but it's 150 routines. You've got all the goodies out of Nocturnal Creations. You've got Corner Piccadilly, Head-to-Head Poker, Twister, blah, 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 blah. They're all in there. And sometimes people say, oh, I can't afford that. And then I see under their arm a £50 DVD containing 3 tricks. And I just don't get it. I just don't understand why they would rather. And I'm not knocking the DVD they bought, but I'm saying if you can buy a DVD for 50 quid, why are you complaining about a hardback book which contains 150 routines, which is very nicely produced, which you could just take down to the pub or the cafe? So I can't see. I don't get it.
No, completely agree with you.
I've no answer for it. And you know, you and I both. I'm on this second-hand magic thing, and I see people selling these watches that they bought for like 400 quid.
Yeah,
500 quid, 600. I'm totally bemused.
No, totally agree with you. I think part of the reason is magicians like toys, and and that's the thing. But you know, it's and books aren't as popular as they have been. But I mean, people still buy them. Vanishing Ink is still doing very well publishing books on a very regular basis, and so are you. Yeah,
well, I wouldn't. I mean, if it, you know, I don't. It's not a labour of love. So again, Gold Dust sold 3,000 copies, and that's a testament. It sounds boastful, but it's a testament to the content. And I write in a very conversational manner. So most of my tricks are described in 1 or 2 pages. Again, I'm not knocking our brethren over the water, but you know, we've both got books on our shelves where they take 30 pages to describe one trick.
Yeah.
If a trick takes 30 pages to describe it, the trick's too bloody long.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
You know, Corner Piccadilly, which you do, is in this book is a 1-page description.
Yeah.
1 page.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, so again, you know, I feel like a bit of an old fossil when I talk about it, but you know, people do still buy books, and thank God they do.
Well, here's a question for you. You obviously started releasing books and more books and more books and more books. Then you decided to release some DVDs, and you did those through Alakazam, I think. Is that right?
Well, I did some early ones myself back in the 90s. They were a bit creaky, you know, they weren't great. I did one in 2004 with. Do you remember Gary Young?
Yeah.
I did one with Gary Young, which that went very, very well. And then Alakazam got hold, and I did the Gold Dust trilogy DVD. We filmed the whole thing in a day and a half, 50 routines. I always joke with Peter. I say the reason we did that is because you were too tight to book me another couple of nights in the hotel.
You know, would you? Let me ask you a question. You've released stuff through lots of different dealers, and obviously you've done an awful lot with Alakazam, not just Gold Dust, but you've done, I think, OMG Packet Tricks and a few other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
My question is, for somebody who's wanting to create magic, and we'll talk about actually advice on creating in a bit, but if they've got a trick that they feel is ready to publish, whether it be a trick or a book or a DVD set, would you advise people self-publishing like you have with a lot of your stuff, or would you advise them going through a dealer? What in your opinion is the best way to deal with this?
If you're not a good demonstrator, and if you're not a good businessman, it's best to go through another publisher, because I mean, again, I'm not boasting, but I sell my stuff because, like you, I get out there and do it, and I do Blackpool, and I go around the world to conventions and lectures, and I perform the stuff. But if you're not that kind of a persona, and you're a creator, if you publish your own books, they're going to end up under your bed or in your wardrobe, because creating is one thing, but the selling thereof, the marketing thereof, is a totally another ball game. So I mean, there aren't many people who would publish other people's stuff. I mean, because Stephen Minch has gone from Hermetic Press, L&L have packed up. I think there's only, I mean, I only do my own stuff, so the only person I can think of would be Andi Gladwin.
Yeah, Vanishing Ink. They publish an awful lot of books, don't they?
Is there anybody else?
Kaufman and, well, it's not Kaufman and Greenberg anymore, is it? But Richard Kaufman, through sort of Genie, he's still publishing.
Yeah. But I think he probably sources the material. I think he'll go for something he can think. I can't imagine you could phone him and say, "Look, I've got all this great stuff. Will you publish it for me?"
No, I think he's very selective now.
Yeah.
I believe that Penguin Magic have been doing some stuff as well. I spoke to Eric Tate and Nick Locopo from Penguin Magic on a recent interview, and they said that they have actually got books that they've published that they continue to publish. I think Penguin are doing some stuff as well.
Oh, right.
But yeah, it's few and far between.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So what advice would you give for somebody who wants to create their own magic to sell? Because you've created so much magic. How does your creativity process run, Paul? How do you find inspiration, and how do you then create that trick? How would you you're sitting there with a pack of cards one day, and the next day you've got this book in front of you.
Yeah.
How do you go from?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, the first thing is that, say, for instance, the history behind Easy Ace estimation. Ed Marlowe published Marlowe's Miracle Aces in 1964, but it was very advanced and, in my opinion, not very practical, but also not very theatrical, because it just did 1 cut, 2 cuts, 3 cuts, 4 cuts, and it was difficult to do. You needed a brand new deck, So 30 odd years ago, I thought I'd like the similar effect, but I want it to be easy. I want it to be done with any deck. I'd like it to make it more theatrical with some more changes down the line. And so basically I fiddled around with it, and I came up, without blowing the secret, but I came up with the fact that you can do it with a borrowed deck. You use the straddle barrow, which, as you know, is really easy to do. You get this extra bit of business with the third ace. And so it just, in my opinion, it turns a very advanced, slightly impractical routine into a table hopper for weddings and parties and trade shows and pubs and clubs. Yeah. So that's kind of one way. The other is having a brainstorm about an idea. I think if you've got enough books and you are that deep with it, you just kind of, things happen. And I mean, for instance, I mean, I'm not as aggrieved as other people may think I am, but I know you didn't like my stunner routine.
It's not your best work, no.
Right. Let me just try and defend it. And if you still hate it, that's fine. But the way I do it, and I'm going to I can't really do it for you here, but I'm going to try and do it for you. The way I kind of work is, I'm going to do Easy Ace estimation, and I'll say to somebody, shuffle the cards, give the cards a good shuffle, take out the aces, and then shuffle them again if you want. Now, whilst that is happening, it's a bit boring, isn't it? They're doing all the business.
Yeah.
So I will then say, oh, by the way, folks, whilst Bill's doing that, let me just tell you, many, many years ago, I got a poker hand, really so bad, I kept it. And here it is. Here's my poker hand. In fact, look at that. That's a lousy hand, that. We've got a 4, a 6, a 4, a 6, and a 10, 2 4s, 2 6s. That's no good at all. Now, when I was playing that game of cards, you're still shuffling, by the way. Yeah, keep shuffling. Whilst I was playing that game, I kept the cards close to my chest, and I thought, if only I could switch these whilst nobody was noticing. And that's what I did. I switched my speed. Did you see that? Did you see the switch? No, no. I got myself, can you see that? I got myself a royal flush in spades. It's brilliant, isn't it? But I couldn't use the bloody thing because they all came from different decks. Anyway, have you shuffled? And that's it. So it's an interim bit of business. The cards go straight back in my pocket, which resolves one of the issues you had. They go straight back in the pocket and I carry on. So it takes about 10, 20 seconds and it's an interim trick and that's all it is.
Yeah. In that context, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And I'm a firm believer of having routines that you do while dead time is happening in an act, whether that be you're talking, you're gagging, you're making jokes, or whether it be, a lot of the time I'll do some Sharpie manipulation. I'll because I do a lot of Sharpie stuff. So I mean that I'm a big believer of doing that sort of thing. My issue with it is if you're going to present it as a trick in its own right.
Oh, no.
It's because here's the thing: you've created thousands of card tricks.
Yeah.
That trick, in my opinion, isn't as strong as some of the other stuff you've created. Why would you do that over something else and present it as, well, let me show you something else right now and focus everyone's attention on it as a trick in its own right? As a bit of business in between tricks, cool, no problem. But as a trick in its own right, especially because of all the amazing stuff you've done, because normally with you're going to be doing stuff with a regular pack of cards and a regular pack of cards. Then you bring this packet out and you do something with a packet. Then you put it away. It almost becomes more suspicious because you didn't take it out the deck, if that kind of makes sense. Well, but as an interim piece in between two sets, I totally agree with you. It's a nice way of doing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would never do it as watch this. I originally came up with it for Blackpool 2 years ago. Just for fun, and I remember just doing it at Blackpool, and I made the cards up. And
I bet it sold really well at Blackpool.
Well, I didn't have it for sale then, because what I did was I would literally, I would be, I mean, if only I could stand, I'd be standing there, and I would say, oh, by the way, hello, Bill, nice to see you. Oh, this is the hand, I'm telling you about the hand of poker I got, blah 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 blah, and then I would casually, they'd see the blue backs. I would just talk about it. And I say, if you've noticed, by the way, I haven't actually got any sleeves here. There's no sleeves at all. But without any sleeves, I got myself a royal flush in spades. But I couldn't use the bloody things because look. And then all I did was put the cards away. And it was that convention 2 years ago. A couple of magicians said, fucking hell. And I thought, it's better than I thought it was. I thought it was just a bit of fun. So that's really, I mean, it's just, it's literally 10 seconds of my life, but if it gets people going, it's kind of good enough for me. But I would never do it on its own. Like you said, I would never do it on its own.
No, doing it on its own is my issue. But doing it like that, I actually think that's a nice little bit of business to do. Yeah. Here's a question for you, Paul. Do you forget tricks? Like, I mean, you must have created more magic than most people would even consider knowing. Like, you've written so many books, so many different routines, so many standalone routines, so much stuff.
Yeah.
Have you forgotten some of your older routines?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I still read my own stuff just to brush up on it. I mean, it tends to come back like riding a bike. But I had I had a brain fart at a lecture a while ago. I mean, I know you've teased me about this, about the use of the Elmsley count. But I actually looked back. I went through, just because I was feeling a bit aggrieved by this, I looked back on all my books, and I've actually published something like 780 routines, of which only 63 use the Elmsley count. So I thought, actually, it's not as many as I thought it was. So, but I was at this lecture, and I had a brain fart, and I couldn't remember how to do the Elmsley count. I literally could not remember how to do the Elmsley count. So I thought, either old age is creeping in, or it's just one of those things. But I've been at a gig where I've been so overloaded with tiredness or travel, I have stood there and I've totally forgotten what I'm doing. It just goes. And then I sort of start making things up, choose a card. Oh, look, it's appeared in my pocket, because I can control it to the top and palm it off. And, oh, look, it's appeared from that pocket. And I've sort of done those knackered gigs where you start talking twaddle, we just kind of it just nonsense comes out. But I have forgotten. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Ryland, you know my son Ryland.
Yeah.
We do a review show every week. He fooled me yesterday with a Paul Gordon trick. Completely fooled me. It's a new one that came in, and he nabbed it before I got a chance to see it. It's the one with the cards with Houdini on it and
Oh, the Houdini
stuff.
Yeah.
And an Omega count, is it? The
An
Omega
Omega count. That's right.
I'd never seen that count before. And Ryland had taken this thing off, and he'd watched the download without me, and I didn't know. He was up in his bedroom, and he'd learnt this whole thing. And he's like, "Dad, I want to show you a trick." And I'm like, "Go on then." So he showed me this, and I just literally, I just didn't have a clue how it works. And I was like, "Dude, that's amazing." So we're doing it on the review show, but you know, that's just come out, or at least it's only just landed on our doorstep. But I really like that. Really like that.
With the Amiga count, I mean, a lot of my packet tricks, they don't use the Aldi count, they use the Amiga count, because the Amiga count does so much. I mean, I think it's just if you've got a chance to have a look at it, on my website, there's a thing called 5-card Monty. So I know you like the Monty routine, but the 5-card Monty, you are literally using that, you are showing 5 Queen of Hearts and an Ace of Spades, and using that move, you end up with 5 Ace of Spades and 1 Queen of Hearts, and you end clean. And I think in all the years, I'm the only person I've ever seen use it, bearing in mind Jeff Busby published the Amiga count 45 years ago,
wow.
50 years ago. It's a beautiful, useful move. I wish I hadn't said that now, because they're all going to be Googling it.
Yeah, they're gonna be that you know, that it fooled me, completely fooled me.
Oh.
I didn't see how didn't see it coming at all. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So you let's very quickly just talk about magic conventions.
Yeah.
And because obviously you've created a lot of magic, you've published a lot of books, and one thing that we see Paul Gordon an awful lot at every single magic convention. It's something, and we say you've retired from performing. You most definitely have not retired from creating or lecturing, or in fact, I imagine, we haven't talked about this, but I imagine you decided to take a step back from the performing so you could focus more on, because I know you really enjoy lecturing to magicians. I know you really enjoy performing for magicians. So I imagine that's.
Well, I prefer teaching. I just actually have always, I mean, I don't want to burst the bubble, I guess, but I've never really enjoyed gigging that much. I mean, I've done it, it's been a good living, but as the years go by, you know, again, I'm not moaning about my lot, but you know, traveling up and down the motorways and then looking at your clock because you're trying to get to the second gig, and oh my God, and there's a hold up, and there's a blah blah blah. It used to become so stressful, and you know, I just wasn't enjoying all that. So I've always preferred teaching. You know, I like to think I'm a good teacher, and I had some very nice words from Jeff McBride about all that, about being a good teacher, and Harry Lorayne. So teaching is part of lecturing, and teaching is writing, and the conventions. I like having a laugh with people. I mean, I tell jokes at my stand at Blackpool, and to lighten it, because everybody's so serious, and dealers are like deadly serious, and I think, come on, let's make this fun, you know. One of my, do you want to hear a joke, Craig?
Yeah.
One of my jokes is, and I tell them, you can see people thinking, where's he going with this? One of my jokes is about this couple. They're trying to start a family, and things aren't going well, and they go to the doctor, and the guy says, look, you know, we've tried and tried and tried, we just can't start a family. So the doctor says, look, what I want you to do, take this little jar home, do the business into the jar, bring it back tomorrow, we'll do some tests and see what the problem is. So the guy goes home with his little jar, his little pot, really embarrassing, goes back to the doctor the next day and puts the empty jar on the doctor's desk. And the doctor says there's nothing in it. And the guy says, oh, look, he says, I tried with my right hand, not a thing. I had to go with my left hand, nothing. I got the wife involved. She tried with the left hand. She tried with the right hand. We got the mother-in-law involved. She tried with the right hand. She tried with the left hand. She tried with her teeth in. She tried with her teeth out. But none of us could get the lid off the bloody jar.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So
I did wonder where you were going with that one.
So if you come to my stand at Blackpool, these are the kind of jokes you get.
Well, you know what? I interviewed Mark Mason on this channel a little while ago, and we talked a lot about demming and what makes a good magic demonstration and what makes a good magic dealer. And you're one of the people that kind of is in the Mark Mason school of demming, which is you are so active on that stand. From the second that people go into that dealer hall to the second it closes, you are stood up, you are performing, you are demming. I'm tired just watching you. And you see so many people these days, they just sit down and they just don't do anything, and they don't interact with the punters, and you work your ass off, Paul. You really do.
Well, bless you. I mean, I do it because, you know, it's necessary for the business, but I just genuinely like people. I mean, I like seeing old friends, and I like showing my stuff. I like trying to prove that my stuff is doable, you know, because you hear people say, oh, I don't know, corner Piccadilly, that's difficult to do. And I then demonstrate, and I said, look, it's not that difficult. You know, like anything, it needs practice, or whatever the routine may be, one of the packet tricks or this, that, and the other. But I just genuinely like people doing stuff, because we're all in this racket together, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, we're you know, we may think we're a big community, but there's you know, I've seen people come and go over the years, and there's not many people, you know, you're around, I'm around, but generally speaking, it's the same few hundred creators, performers, lecturers, and it's basically, you know, I've been at conventions for years, it's basically the same punters.
Yeah.
You see the same people year in, year out, and a couple of newbies will come along, and then they go, and more people come and go. So why not make it fun for all of us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I did a rant video on this. I do a rant thing on a Friday where I talk about something that annoys me. And a few weeks ago, I did a rant video on magic conventions and how magicians should act when they go to a magic convention, because certain things annoy me. And one of the things that I said, and I'd like to know if this is your opinion as well, is I said, because I've spent years working on different stands, as you know, I spent a lot of time working with David Penn, and one of the things that annoyed the hell out of me is you're there for 3 days at Blackpool, for example. That guy that comes back 30 or 40 times over the same 3-day period to see the same bloody trick.
Yeah.
It's like he goes and sees it. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll think about that. Let me come back an hour later. Can you show me that trick again? And then he comes back later on. I've got my mate. Can you show my mate? Yeah, we'll think about it. We'll come back. I've got my next mate. And then at the end of the 3 days, you literally are this close to headbutting the guy off the balcony, because it's got to a point now where it's like, look, it's not going to change. You've seen the same bloody thing 30 times. Either buy it or don't, but it's off, frankly. Does that annoy you as well?
Oh, you've hit the nail on the head. You know, I saw you say that on your rounds, and I was sitting there wetting myself laughing out of recognition, because I get it. I mean, I don't want to be rude to people and say, look, for God's sake, buy it or don't buy it. And I say to them, look, out of the nicest respect, what are you expecting to see in the 10th performance that you didn't see in the other 9? You come to the stand, and I said, and also we're talking about a 20 quid trick here. You know, you're going to be able to do it, but you know, to keep bringing your mates back. And I said, and I think actually what happens is I end up like free entertainment.
Yeah.
I'm like, they don't have to go to the main venue to see Fred Bloggs perform. They can come and watch me bust a gut demonstrating non-stop. I mean, that sounds egotistical, but you know, I'm almost like free entertainment. And I actually said this on this guy said on Facebook, he said, oh, I come to Paul's stand not to buy anything, just for the entertainment. And I was a bit annoyed by that, because I thought, you can't even be bothered to buy something, bearing in mind I give you free entertainment for 3 days at Blackpool. I wouldn't do it to anybody. I wouldn't go to any other person and stand there watching them knock their socks off without buying something. Even if I didn't want that thing, I would probably buy it because I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Completely, 100%, absolutely. Especially as your stuff is, you know, very, very commercial. You know, it's not a pipe dream. You're not doing, you know, ridiculous palms that like will only work from 1 degree angle and 99% of your stuff is so commercial. It really, and it's not the most, you know, it's not that difficult. You know, there's certain moves that you use which card magicians should be able to do anyway. And if you're looking at a cool Paul Gordon trick and you're thinking, well, that's completely too advanced for me, then you need to work a little bit more on your sleights, and you need to, actually.
I think I am aware that I think people say, I mean, again, I don't, for God's sake, I don't want to sound egotistical, but people have said you make it look easy. And I say, well, I do make it look easy because I've been doing it a long time, but actually it is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I put a video out just to kind of prove people wrong. I did a video of advanced card sleights. I put it out on Facebook just to show people that I can do second deals, bottom deals, passes, angle palms. I never ever use them at gigs. I've never used them in any shape or form apart from magical masturbation at home.
Yeah.
My published stuff, in Gold Dust, there's a sleight section. I think it's about 10, 15 sleights, which is basically a one-hand palm, a few false counts, jog shuffle, straddle faro. But there's nothing major in there,
I've noticed, by the way, you don't really use a riffle shuffle, do you? Or a waterfall shuffle?
No, I don't.
Which is really, I use the waterfall shuffle all the time, mainly because I do a lot of memdeck stuff. And I use the truffle shuffle as a full shuffle.
Yeah.
The full waterfall shuffle, because I really do believe if you're doing memdeck stuff, you need to be able to constantly be apparently mixing the deck. And I'm always using the memdeck. So if I'm going to be using that shuffle as a full shuffle, it makes sense that I'd be using that style of shuffle in my normal card work as well. But it is the kind of the accepted shuffle amongst card magicians. How come you never use a waterfall shuffle?
I do, but generally I came up with this thought years ago that I wanted to be able to shuffle. It's a false shuffle, the jog shuffle I do. I wanted to be able to shuffle like they do. Like most punters at a wedding or a party will shuffle like that. Yeah. So I always wanted to do this thing where I was like one of them, but I was showing them stuff. I didn't want to do anything that looked remotely flourishy. But if I do a table act, and I think if I do a table act, there's probably slightly more interested people there, or slightly more knowledgeable people. I will do the waterfall or a riffle shuffle. And also gigs wise, I find that if I do too many waterfall shuffles, it just bends the cards too much, and you end up with a deck that thick in the summer sun, all waved up, don't you?
You do. Yeah.
I think it's just that, really.
Fair enough. I've always wanted to ask you, so I was interested. Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you a question, Court. We're gonna, before we wrap all this whole interview up, let me ask you a question. What's next? You retired from performing. But I know you're not retiring from creating at all. Let's just assume that the apocalypse doesn't happen, and we don't turn into an episode of The Walking Dead and everything goes back to normal. What's next for Paul Gordon? Because without being funny, and this is something I say a lot to the guests on this channel, but that's, of course, it's true. Your legacy, my friend, is set. You have released so much, published so much, created and innovated so much magic. You're such a respected name that if you decided to call it a day completely now and never put pen to paper again, never release another thing again, people in 50, 60, 70, 80 times will be, it's 70, 80 years, will be performing stuff that you've created over your lifetime. So your legacy is set. You've done so much. But knowing you're probably not going to be slowing down anytime soon. And in fact, over the last year, I imagine you're itching to get out and do more. So what have you got planned? Is there anything left on Paul Gordon's magical bucket list that you haven't hit yet?
Not really. I mean, my wife said, you don't want to slow down so that you end up not doing anything. But I love home life. The thing I enjoy mostly is going to conventions and meeting. I know we've fallen out, but we've resolved that. But people like yourself and other people that I've met over the years, and just sitting down. I don't really want to do magic all the time. I like talking about maybe magic, having a laugh and a joke, telling some stories, getting together, relaxing, chilling out. I don't want to be getting drunk all the time because those days are gone. I'd like to be able to do more teaching. I've got a project idea that is in fruition with Dee Christopher, who I met through Penguin, and we've hit it off very well.
Well, D is a great guy, and the stuff that
Isn't
he's
it?
doing with his new production company
Yeah.
is incredible.
Mm. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I don't want to blow the secret, but I've got an idea for a packet trick wallet that will, I think, kind of revolutionize packet trick wallets. I bought one the other day, and I can't tell you whose it is because it'll upset them. But if you turn the wallet, it's not this, by the way, but let's assume that's it. The plastic bit here goes that way across the wallet, not that way.
Right.
Now, the problem is, if you put it in your pocket that way, all the cards fall out.
Yeah.
Why didn't the creator think of that? Because, I mean, it seems like an obvious thing that, and if you have the packet trick wallet in your pocket that way, they slide out that way.
Yeah.
But, I've got this idea. So, D. Christopher, I've been talking to him about that. Maybe another Alakazam. I did 2 academies for them. Maybe another one of those. I've got a proper lecture in the diary for Southend if we're out of lockdown by then. I'd like to get back to doing all that. I don't really know, to be honest, Craig. I mean, I think I've probably got one more book in me, maybe of some nature. When I go to conventions, I'd like to go to Blackpool one day as a punter. And what I want to do, I want to go around with you and annoy other dealers by saying, "Show me that again." I'd like to really I'd like to go in disguise with I'm going to grow get a fake beard, and I'm going to go along and say, "What does that do?" Or, how much is that? £20? £20? Oh, I'll give you £5 for it.
Yes, I think we should do that. I think that'd be absolutely brilliant.
I mean, you could go around and film it, and that'd be a very funny video, wouldn't it?
Oh, it really would. It really would. It really would. It really, really would.
I mean,
because we know the stuff that just winds dealers up.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember John Allen did that very funny act where he did all the lines that magicians use in one act? It was his act. This trick he did was based on, put your hand out, the clean one. And every time he did a hackneyed line, a bell would ring.
I don't think that was John Allen.
Was it John?
I'm thinking of Rob James.
Rob James, yes, sorry, Rob James, you're right.
And it was one of the funniest acts I've ever seen. He had the laptop up in front of him.
That's it.
Not that hand, the clean hand. Although, when you get the urge, stop. Although if you get the urge, why would you stop? And every single time, it took these corny gags and just made it hilarious. When that thing went up, it was brilliant.
Wasn't it brilliant? And I'd like to do a version of that, sort of magic convention. Because I've written, I mean, in my books every now and then I tell stories about stuff at conventions and stuff. I mean, you can't even repeat it live on here. I mean, it's unbelievable the things I've seen over the years or what people have done. And it just, you can't, it's bewildering, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me, on that subject, and before we wrap this up, I've got one final question, which is, I know that one thing that you love doing is telling stories. So it would be remiss of me to interview Paul Gordon and not ask you your favorite story, whether it be from lecturing or conventions or performing, your favorite funny story.
Well, I'd say it's still my favorite one. I got this phone call from this guy. He says, look, he said, this is last minute. He said, would you do a gig at the London Hilton tonight? Now, I was a bit wary because I thought, well, this is before online credit cards and all that. And he said, I saw you at so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. And I remembered him. And I thought, yeah, well, okay, right. It's going to be okay. And I think then my fee was like 400 quid. So I told him that. He said, oh, that's not enough. He said, to come up last minute, I'll double it, cash, double it. So I thought, right. So this was in the mid-afternoon, and I've been sat in the garden. I was all unshaved. So I'm kind of doing my teeth, shaving, put my shirt on all at the same time because I went by train. The train was due in about an hour. And he said to me, what the idea is, I'm going to propose to my girlfriend. I'm going to propose to her at 7 o'clock in the evening in the hotel room number 355, whatever. And at 7:05, the doorbell on the bedroom at the hotel will go. It'll be you. I'll open it. You'll come in. She'll go, oh, what's all this about? And you're going to entertain us for half an hour. And that'll be like the entertainment for okay, fine. I got to the London Hilton. I sat downstairs about 6 o'clock, arrived early, and I'm watching my clock. 7:05, I ring the bell on the door of the hotel bedroom, and a voice says, "Come in." So I went in, nobody there, and I went through, and in the bedroom, I went in the bedroom, and there's the bloke in his 70s is in bed. The girl was about 16. She pulled the sheet up in front of her eyes like this. She didn't want to be seen. And I kind of didn't know what to say, you know. And you could tell they just had sex. They were sweating like a pig. And right. He said, right, what are you going to do? So I sat on the edge of the bed. I pushed all the creases of the sheets down. She hid away like this. And I kind of just sort of, it's the best I possibly could, went through half an hour of, you know, card magic on the bed, you know, and blah, 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 blah. He was saying to her, watch this. And she was saying, no, I don't want to watch this. She was foreign. I don't want to watch. I'm not, you know, you didn't tell me about this. And it was obviously, with all due respect, she was a woman of the night, whatever the phrase is. And at the end of this half an hour, I sort of grabbed my envelope off the side and went downstairs, got on the train. I sat on the train for an hour and a half back home like this. Did this really? I was expecting, you know, Candid Camera. I was expecting Candid Camera or Jeremy Beadle to come out the closet.
Oh my gosh!
I mean,
I have a similar story to that, but it's nowhere near as that good. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh! Wow.
One of the clean ones. I mean, I took. Do you want one more?
Yes.
One more. I did this wedding. This was in Midhurst at the Angel Hotel in Midhurst. I remember it very well. And I arrived there, and the bride was pissed, absolutely pissed. And she had a cigarette. She was wearing the gown and the veil, and she had a fag out of her mouth like this. Right, mate, how are you? Thanks for coming along. Thanks for like this. So she looked like some old 1970s comedian, you know. And she then said to me, "Do you fancy a, you know?" So I laughed and I went, "Oh, I'd love to, but you know, not on your wedding day." I tried to dismiss it. So I did the sort of first part of the gig. I went into the band room where the band was setting up, and the drummer said to me, "You the magician, mate?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You won't believe it, what the bride just said." I said, "I will believe it." And we laughed about it. He said, "Yeah." She said, "Do you want to, you know, come out the back and have a..." Anyway, at the end of the gig, I left the hotel, went round to the car park to get into my car. In her wedding outfit, she was bent over one of the cars with this bloke behind her. And I drove off. I thought, there's a wedding that's not going to last long.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go the distance, to be honest, Paul.
I don't think it was probably going to make it past the night.
My gosh, that's...
Oh, and one very other quick one for you. This is a clean one. This is kind of, I'm sure you've had this. I did this wedding at Ashdown Park Hotel, and it was a big society wedding. It was a big thing, you know. And I arrived, and there was about 40 chefs down the lawn with the staff on these like barbecue things, all down the lawn, and it was a really posh do. And I stood there, and I was like milling around like you do, waiting to entertain for all the guests to suddenly turn up. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's way past the time. And then suddenly this bloke kind of wandered in and went, "It's off." Never turned up at the church. And the whole, all these chefs, all the food, I went, oh. And everybody kind of sort of lamely wandered off. I'd been paid, which was great, but that was kind of a...
I've had that a couple of times, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It sounds awful, but you kind of get to go home early with money in your pocket.
Yep. Yeah. There is that. My gosh, Paul, this has been amazing. Now, before I wrap this all up, where should people go if they want to check your products out? I'm going to flash it at the bottom of the screen right now. What's the URL?
It's obviously www. Paul Gordon, PaulGordon.net /shop is the shop page, and every trick has a video. Everything is free, tracked, worldwide postage. It's all included in the cost, so that if you order from Timbuktu, it's free post, signed for, everything's included. And sounds boastful, but again, it is all doable worker stuff, including
Stunner. Here's a question for you. For anybody who's never experienced your magic before, because people watch this channel from all over the world, if you had to suggest 3 products on your shop that people can go and buy to get an idea of the type of magic that you do, that they'll enjoy practicing and ultimately performing, it can be standalone, it can be DVDs, it can be books, what 3 products would you recommend a Paul Gordon novice to get off your shop first of all?
Right. Well, I would recommend buying one of the books so that you can see that what we've been saying hopefully is true as far as you're concerned, that it's doable, workable.
So which book would you recommend for somebody who's never seen your material before?
I'd probably go for Quidnunc.
Okay.
Excuse me. It's a, can I just reach over? Hang on.
Please do.
Going out of shot here. Well, there is Quidnunc. A nice. There's loads. There's a trick in there called Worker Supreme, which Gary Jones uses, and he liked it so much he asked to publish it in his Beach book, volume 1, I think it was. Worker Supreme, which is, if you don't know it, Craig, it's worth checking out. I can tell you about it later.
Yeah.
If people want to get, there's 2 DVDs for 20 quid, £25 postage included, where you can see me work, and it's all taught. And packet trick wise, I don't think you can go far wrong than getting Corner Piccadilly as a starter.
I agree. Corner Piccadilly is amazing.
Because everybody, I mean, the video that you put out was hugely beneficial to me, because it just showed it once again, somebody else doing it well.
Yeah.
Really well. And
I have 5 sets of Corner of Piccadilly, because I didn't want to get into a situation where it wasn't available anymore.
Yeah.
And it's such a big part of my walk around set that I have five of them in case I ever lose it or it gets damp or something.
Yeah.
Backups, because I never want to be in a situation where I'm not doing that routine.
Oh, that's great. That's very kind of you to say so. And I am genuinely sorry, Craig, that we had this fallout. I mean, it's probably mostly my fault. I don't know. But
I can be very hot-headed.
Yeah. It's a big shame. But I think if you're creative like you are and I am, you can get kind of fragile about stuff, and it happens, and it's silly it happens, and anyway.
I agree. Look, I'm telling you, Paul, you are one of the good guys in magic, even when, and you really are, you're one of the good guys in magic, and I do so much of your material, and I would never not do any of your material, even when we had our little bit of falling out for a while. I was still performing your stuff. I was still I was still singing your praises. That has never changed. You are
I kept saying to our mutual friend, I said, can you tell, I said to Steve Deller, I said, can you say to Craig that this Paul Gordon's not as bad as he thinks he is?
Steve and I do a show together, and he literally pulls his hair out over me, because, as you know, I can be quite a controversial person in the magic community, and because people know that me and Steve do a double act together, he's the one that gets it in the neck, because he's the nice guy. So if I've pissed somebody off, which tends to happen from time to time, they'll come to me through Steve, and he just gets sick to death of it, to be perfectly honest. So I'll frequently get a text from Steve going, okay, you fucked this guy off now. All right, can you ring him, or can you deal with it? Or he'll see a post on Facebook and he'll text me going, please, can you take that down? I know that I'm going to get shit over what you've just put on Facebook. So I feel sorry for Steve. I really do, because he does get it in the neck with.
Isn't he a gem? Isn't he? Isn't he just wonderful?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
He does it. The thing with Steve Deller, he doesn't realize how good he is, despite how many awards he's won.
He's won them all, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, I mean 25, 30 awards, despite how many awards he's won, despite how incredibly talented he is, and despite how phenomenal he is at performing and creating, and everything he puts his mind to, he does it brilliantly. He doesn't realize how good he is. And that's what makes it so endearing watching him, because he's amazing. He really is.
When he did Phantasmagoria down in Brighton, I came to every single show he put on to support him. and I loved it because I just thought it was one of the best things I'd seen, and still, you know, and you know, he's just a gem of a guy as well, isn't he? He's just a really nice bloke,
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Somebody else that people should definitely support, because he's got some great material. He really has.
Yeah, and also he's producing. I mean, his I can't remember the name of the deck of cards. You know, the
Night Flight deck, the Night Flight deck, which
Night Flight deck,
the best marked deck I've ever seen. My eyes are terrible, terrible, and it's the only deck. It's the only marked deck that I can actually see the marks really clearly.
Well, I said that as well. I said that to him. I said, I'll be honest with you, Steve. I don't use marked decks, but it is the only one that I can see the markings. Most of them, there's some famous ones out there. You know those puzzles on the wall, that you look at, and it's a load of dots, and they say you can see a ship. I can never see the ship.
Me neither.
But it's like these playing cards. They say there's the Queen of Hearts. I go, where? I can't see it.
Yeah.
You know the guys, they say, oh, and they do a trick, and they go, right, choose a card, and they go, you can see them trying to look for the markings.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't do that, but his is just fantastic. So if you're watching this, folks, go and buy it. Night Flight deck, fantastic.
Yeah, go and get the Night Flight deck. We reviewed it on the review show a little while ago, and it's so good. Yeah. Ryland swears by it. I swear by it. It's just awesome.
Yeah, brilliant.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you. Hope we can do it again.
Huh?
If you want some more dirty stories, I'll be happy to come back.
Hey, I'll definitely have you back on again. But the next time I have you on, we're just going to listen to Paul Gordon stories for an hour and a half. That'll probably that'll be the most popular video that I ever put on this channel. I will definitely have you back on again. Guys, if you are watching this, I highly suggest that you go to Paul's website, go check out the stuff that he's got on there. You know, go by Corner of Piccadilly, because, you know, it's such an amazing routine, but go get his other stuff as well. Paul's a really good guy. He gives a lot to the Magic community. So, you know, if we can support him, we really should do, because if we don't, he's not going to carry on releasing amazing material, and then that's going to be bad for everybody. So go support Paul. The URL is down below. Make sure you leave a comment. I'm sure Paul will see it if you leave a comment down below. So make sure you leave a comment. And Paul, one more time, thanks for coming on the channel, mate.
Thanks, God bless you.
Take care. See you next week, guys. Bye.